So, what do you do when the tech industry throws you out like yesterday's trash, despite having all these certifications and training and even projects you did yourself? Well, I'm gonna tell you at least my story. So this is the story I give everybody at conferences and stuff. I grew up in an environment where nobody was really actually taught computers. It was pretty much reserved for the nerdy guy in the corner. Went to college for neuroscience because that was the most technical thing, and I think also because it covered a lot of topics that a woman could do from my background. And I took a computational neuroscience class, and once I coded for the first time in MATLAB of all things, it was kind of over from there. Like sometimes you just do something and you're like, you unlock a new part of your brain you didn't realize you had, and you want to use that part of your brain a lot for the rest of your life. So I finished out my neuroscience degree because it was an expensive college that I should not have gone to, but I did because I had a lot of learned helplessness. My parents basically more or less made me. That's a different video. Um, but essentially, I made the best of it. Went ahead and finished out my neuroscience degree, which I actually don't regret uh, because it turned out I wasn't really at a disadvantage to the computer science majors. Again, maybe that's another video. But so I graduated into it was an interesting job market. Compared to today, it was really good. At the time, it didn't really seem very good, but looking back, it was pretty good for tech. Um, there was a recognition that everything was becoming software and they needed a lot of coders and people who were kind of there to help the developers make apps. And so if you really were willing to put in the work to learn to code, um, better even yet if you went to a fancy boot camp, though that wasn't necessarily a requirement at the time yet, um, you could get a job. You'd be a contractor dealing with bullshit and all the bullshit that comes from the meat processing nature of contracting. Uh, but everyone's got to start somewhere, and you could get a job. Um, in Columbus, everyone starts out either Chase Bank or Nationwide. I was a contractor at Nationwide for 3 months. Um, yeah, that was a shit job. Still glad I did it. I got exposed to some cool technologies like Docker and Kubernetes. Kubernetes, which I'll never use, but it's cool to learn about, and Docker, which I do use. So from there, I've had a lot of different tech jobs. Worked for a lot of different companies. I've worked from, well, first, actually, I'll talk about how I was even able to get that job to begin with when I didn't have a CS degree. Because a lot of people are like, hold up, hold up, don't continue. The reason why was because I actually had started going to a lot of meetups out of college because I kind of knew intuitively, like, well, I don't have the resume for these jobs, so I'm just gonna have to network. Like, there's no way around it, which would be kind of an interesting running theme throughout the rest of my tech career and even somewhat post tech career. So I met a bunch of people. One person I met in particular was a guy from London who came here when he was like 16 to 18, was actually homeless for a bit, and then they just hired him on out of pity, basically, in the biology lab OSU, and the rest is history. Currently, he was the CEO of a very small, I always want to keep calling it a startup. It's not technically a startup because they weren't growing at the rate of a startup. They're basically just kind of in a standstill with a software that was older than I was, written in Java, where that was so badly written, to be fair, by someone straight out of college. So really, when you took everything into context, it was kind of amazing. It just worked at all. But it was so bad that you would have these loops where they're indented out to further than I think the file was long, or at least pretty damn close. I mean, these files were crazy. Like, these eyes have seen shit. Anyway, I didn't really do much of that company. I basically just was an unpaid intern, which I know is kind of unpopular, but hey, when you're living with your parents, you're trying to get experience, really not a bad way to go. And it worked. Like, it did work. I only did for so long. He had a lot of integrity, and he was like, listen, you need to, he's like, I'll let you know, he let me hang out. I wasn't paid in money, but I was paid in like basically free training. That now you'd probably have to pay a lot of money to get, and or even back then to some extent. And actually, the stuff I was learning, I got exposed to Docker and stuff at that company, which, because I knew what Docker was and kind of knew how to use it, that got me my nationwide job. So that was cool. From there on, I have been basically a contractor. I don't know if I ever really was a employee at an actual company, and you'll see that with a lot of especially younger millennials, where it's just all contractorship. Contractorship, is that a word? I don't care at this point, honestly. Or consultants, which is now just a euphemism. It's a meaningless word. It's just a euphemism for contractors. It's what companies say to make staff aug people feel better. But honestly, I didn't really care about being staff aug because I was finally coding, which I just loved doing. And I was like, holy shit, this thing I'd love to do, I'm getting paid to do. Because I'm one of those weird people that will code for fun. Like the other day, I randomly got the urge to write a bash script just to do something. I don't know why. I I think it's just the kind of autism I got. I don't know. God, I don't even know if I can count all the jobs I've had. There is some jumping between white and blue collar jobs that was done because I was interested in robots and because I didn't necessarily want to sit at a desk all day. I'm going to skip past that and make it its own video. For the most part, I've been in tech. The job I've done the most where I can say that I'm not, by anyone's definition, a junior, I'm really more of a mid level, was actually a QA. And as much as it kind of sucked that if I was male, I would have not been pushed towards QA and I would have been able to be a developer. And I've even had a lot of male friends tell me that, where they're like, based on the people I work with, if you were male, all the same skills, all the same traits, if you were male, you would be a senior dev by now. Probably still would be without a job right now in tech, but I would have made it to like a developer uh, mid level before. Um, but I made the best of it, and I actually don't like to think of QA as kind of like people that just couldn't be devs. QAs now, the way they're hired are often treated that way, or at least was at the time. But I was always a big advocate in the idea that QA is its own mindset, its own job that deserves respect, and a good QA should get paid just as much as a good dev. And I was good at being a QA. My chaotic brain that wants to explore stuff and find the cracks and then document the hell out of it was perfect for being a QA. And so I was a really good QA. I had BAs be like, how the fuck did you even find this bug? And then I would document. I would be able to reproduce even weird bugs because, like, I had that autistic attention to detail where I started bottom up. So I was a damn good QA. Um, and actually, in my last QA job, I made 65 an hour. Granted, I was responsible for my own health insurance and stuff, but honestly, even with like I made bank. Now, granted, that was at the time when everyone else was also getting overpaid, and because it was an employee's market for once, after which companies were like, "Fuck, we ain't letting that happen again." Um, Also, only worked at that job for 3 months. But when I got laid off from that one, I was happy because even though I was making a bunch of money, I was very stressed out. Like basically made it a 4-day work week job, whether they wanted it or not, which I should have actually had the right to do because I was an independent contractor, but they treat me like a W-2 employee, which, yeah, that whole thing. Um, so I was actually happy when they laid me off because I was like, I don't need this much money, especially not for the price. Um, and so I believe that was the last actual tech job I had. There were some freelancing opportunities I got, I think, kind of out of pity, kind of because I actually had the experience, but kind of out of pity. Um, that I've done since then. I've also freelanced on and off, mostly doing WordPress. I mean, I would do it again for the money, but ugh. um, I don't necessarily recommend it as a career choice. Um, and yeah, that was my last tech job. After that, once the money ran out, then it became DoorDash, odd and end jobs here and there, part time jobs, a lot of 1 day or 1 week jobs where I would try to tolerate it. In a lot of cases, there was actually a couple jobs where I worked for 1 day, find out they lied to me a bunch of shit, and then just quit, just straight up. And I made no secret about why I was quitting, and I don't feel bad, and I don't regret it whatsoever. I do not carry the ire it gets me from boomers. Uh, they lived in a time with unions where they couldn't pull a lot of the shit they do now. Um, so that was a fucking mess. Couldn't afford my apartment anymore. Moved into my car, which I didn't necessarily see as like, oh, my life's going to shit. I just kind of saw it as a new phase of my life. I was actually kind of excited to do it because of my personality, the just sheer amount of money I'd be saving, and just the excitement of it all. I planned to do more traveling with that. It didn't happen. I only lived in the car for a few months. I had my dog, Barbara, who unfortunately I just had to put down about a week ago, who was my everything. And I'm actually really glad I lived in the car because it allowed me to spend a lot of time with her instead of working, which I would have had to do to keep any apartment in Columbus. Um, and she actually really enjoyed living in the car. She was a min pin. She was like 11 pounds. Even at her fattest, she was like 12 pounds. Like, it was more than enough space for her. Plus, like, I took her to so many parks. Like, I still to this day think it was one of the best decisions I ever made from a quality of life perspective. But it only lasted so long. And the thing is, when you have a dog, um, you can only do that for so long, especially once it gets to the warmer months, because you can keep your dog in a cold car, even when it's pretty cold, because they'll just roll up into a ball when it's really cold. And I had people give me shit for this, but honestly, like, especially a small dog, really will be fine because they're gonna sleep most of the time you're gone. Sometimes it was really cold, I would put a hand warmer and a sock so she could lay on, but she never once had issues. And the thing with cars is they hold a lot of heat, and they lose it very slowly, which is great during the winter. Sucks during the summer. So I had to move in with a friend. That didn't work out because the long story short, the landlord was a sociopath. He lived in a two-bedroom apartment that was 600, which sounds insane, and it's like, wow, how great! What could possibly be wrong that would not make it worth? It was 600 for a reason. I think they kept it cheap, purposely tried to only have like friends and family and maybe the occasional other person, but they weren't allowed to come out and say that. So they would just basically bully and make life suck for anybody that wasn't in their in group and had it cheap so it'd be cheap for their friends and family. So yeah, and unfortunately that was kind of the reality of cheap apartments in Columbus at that time. You either had to pay for luxury apartments nobody fucking asked for, or if an apartment was really cheap, it was usually for a reason. Um, then I met who's now my ex, still my best friend, but uh, he took me down to where I am now, which is Southeast Ohio in the Appalachia area. I'm now in the general Athens area, and that's one of the best things I did. Um, really wish I'd done it sooner. Oh yeah, so this is where we're getting into now post tech. Um, do I miss working in tech? You can probably gather, no. I don't even really necessarily miss the money. Um, I don't need that much money. I am one of those people that, you know, when people were like, oh, well, you just need to mold your personality, hide your autism, take on the feminine traits that are just clearly not you, pretend they're you so you can make that money. Like, you just need to fit your square self into a round hole so you can make that money. I was like, or what if I just need less money so I can take those shitty jobs where I don't have to completely remold myself? And that's what I've been doing since then. I've had all kinds of jobs, of a lot of false starts, a lot of trying different things. Tried to become an electrician at some point. Um, and yes, it was the rampant sexism and double standards that pushed me back out. Uh, I would have persevered just out of spite, and also because I do find that shit fascinating. And there was a lot of chances for basically a free associate's degree, except it involves standing. I don't do well standing. And neither do a lot of people, unfortunately. But we live in a country that thinks it is perfectly normal to make human beings who have notoriously weirdly designed feet that if your genes aren't just right, you're fucked, and also knees that are notoriously not the best designed. We think it's normal to and totally okay to make people stand for 8 or 12 hours a day, often for 5 or 6 hours. And a lot of jobs where they had, maybe legal, maybe not immigrants. Again, no person's illegal, but that's what their immigration status was. Uh, we're talking 6 days a week on their feet, 8, 12 hours. Like, it was fucking shameless. Um, and that's been a big thing that's made life really hard. Because it's actually not hard to go out and get a job per se if you just don't give a shit about ruining your body. And some people can kind of deal with it and take this long standing shifts. It's not great for your body regardless, but some people can tolerate it for longer than others and kind of feel like it's okay-ish, take an Advil, get over it, um, and don't have to deal with the repercussions until they're like 50 or 60. Uh, I feel it that evening. I had one warehouse job I was trying to do. Again, quit after one day because they lied through their teeth at me. Um, I legit couldn't do much the next day. And I know now through a lot of research and talking to people at like Good Feet store and those sorts of stores, of all places, which sounds kind of dumb, but if you can't afford a podiatrist, they're actually honestly a pretty good second best. I'm not gonna lie to you. So naturally, I'm doing gig work. I'll have a whole other video as to like the pros and cons of gig work and whether you should do it, dear viewer. I'll say for me, it fits my lifestyle, and I think that is something pretty common for a lot of people who have been kicked out of whatever industry, but even tech, is gig work. Um, I've managed to actually turn it into a bit of a mini career at sorts. I've even am trying to track my miles to claim it on my taxes and all that. Because there's a lot of wear on your car, and again, you don't have an employer to take care of the taxes for you. You gotta get all that good shit. Uh, I will tell you, even on my worst days doing Walmart Spark, where the app's messing up, I'm dealing with an asshole customer, the employees at Walmart loading the car don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. Though I don't blame them because a lot of it is Walmart's shitty technology. So they're the last people I'm going to blame because they're in the same. I hate when Spark drivers do that and just making us versus. No, no, they are our allies. Anyway, my worst days, I'm like, at least I'm not in corporate. Because here's the thing, um, it wasn't just being a woman in corporate. You can actually get pretty far, somewhat controversially, I'll say, you can actually get pretty far in corporate if you have a particular personality. I have seen women, even in tech, even as developers, be able to do pretty well. But the thing is, there is a extra set of requirements for women that they don't put on the job description, but is implicitly there when you're a woman, that you have to behave a certain way. And I don't have those traits. And one of the most frustrating things to me was seeing guys who a lot of times weren't even as skilled as I was in a lot of things, with the same very similar personalities, or sometimes even just as blunt, just as erratic, but even less nice, even less manners, and less hygienic, being able to stay in their jobs while I got kicked out. And you can only see that so many times before you just almost want to go scorched earth and say, you know what, I don't care what happens to y'all, go ahead and fire me. Is that a proper use of the term scorched earth? I don't know. You just get to where you just don't care. And the sad part is also, even if you want to ignore all that woke DEI stuff, corporate, there's so much bullshit work that takes up so much of your time that I actually now do more tech stuff, like technical skill learning and project building now as a Walmart Spark driver because of my free time than I did when I actually worked in tech. Let that sit for a second, okay? So will I ever go back into tech? Probably not into a typical traditional job in America. So the next phase of my life I see, and it's probably going to take several years to do this, is I plan to move to Europe, specifically Spain. Honestly, I just chose Spain because I like the lifestyle and I already happen to know some Spanish. Not great. I'm probably a B1 if you're being really compassionate. You almost just have to kind of pick a place in Spain because once you're in one place, you can move to others. But anyway, um, that's the next phase of my life. Again, that could be its whole other video. I will not subject myself to American corporate culture again. And if I do, it's because the price is right, and I'll only do it for a few months. And it's just to save up money to fuck off to Europe. And yes, please spare me all the comments. I've been doing a lot of research on this. I realize they're having a housing crisis over there too. Job, I get it. I hear you. I'm taking that all into account. Okay. And yes, there is a chance I may come back. There is a chance I say, yeah, that was fun. I'm fucking coming back to Athens, Ohio. There is a chance. I get that. You don't need to tell me that. Okay. But listen, I'm 30 years old. I've been in Ohio most of my life. Fucking hell, I need to go do something else. Okay. Like, now, how that relates is I may take another corporate, I use that in quotations because it's going to be nothing like the corporate jobs in America. I may take a corporate job in Spain where there's a different work culture. Yes, I know the job market's bad. Apparently, they are needing tech people, and they can't fill that with natives. We'll see if that's just wishful thinking online or if that's actually the truth. We'll see. Um, but I will not apply for another job like that in America. And to any most likely a Gen Xer telling me that I've just given up and I just need to play the game, I did. Because I've had a lot of friends, even well intended, who kind of talk to me in this very pitiful, oh, don't give up, you can do it. And it's, listen, I could be nice about it or I could be real. And the short but real answer, and I mean, Gen X always claim they are the blunt, like honesty, so here you go. Okay, if you're happy selling your life and your soul to a company, that's fine. Okay, you were the last generation where it was worth it to do that to any degree. Uh, it's not for me and my generation, especially as an autistic woman. Okay, I enjoy gig work a lot more. Yes, you get to sit in a nice air conditioned office making way more than me, but I get to work when I want and drive through the beautiful mountains of Hocking Hills where you come to vacation. So spare me your pity advice, spare me your, mentoring, your pep talks. I'm good. I have, I'm not actually technically completely out of tech, but it's just taken a very different turn. Oh no, actually, I was wrong. My last tech job was actually as tech support at Boy Scouts. Don't work for Boy Scouts, horrible organization. Probably didn't need to tell you that though. Again, whole other video. Every one of the tech jobs I've had could be its own like 30-minute long video, but this video is already getting long enough. I have started a company called Scooter Girls Tech Support because throughout my years, everybody has kind of their special talent. No matter how dumb you are, no matter how whatever you are, fill in blank word to describe your imposter syndrome. Everybody has something that's kind of their special thing. For me, because I kind of learned tech relatively late in life, I can empathize with people who suck at tech. And so I know how to speak to people. I have the neural pathways still intact to remember what it's like to be them and the stuff they get stuck on. And that has been actually a fucking superpower. When I would go to my tech meetups, we'd have new people come trying to learn Python, the old Python mentors, and God bless them, they really were trying. They really were those old guys that were like, "Oh, I'm gonna help the new generation, the women get into tech." Da, 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 da. They really were well intended, but they would get so frustrated because they'd be like, "Do I really have to fucking explain what a function is to you?" Yes, you do. So they would try to teach them for a bit, kind of give up after a while. And those people would come to me. I taught them what a function is. I taught them what a loop was. I actually taught them how to set up their development environment, which a lot of stuff was weirdly bad. There wasn't a lot of stuff on that. I was like, here's how to code in Python, but here's not actually just set up to code. I don't know. That was anyway. I had a lot of people tell me that I was very good at helping people. This even went outside of coding, using a phone, using a computer. I had a hairstylist friend who I helped her with a lot of her tech to help her run her business because she was good at cutting hair, not fumbling with technology. And quite frankly, should have not had to struggle as much as she did. Um, the shitification of tech has weirdly presented me an opportunity. I wish it wasn't shitifying. I would gladly lose some clients because they just start actually making shit intuitive, but here we are. That's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to grow that business. There's thankfully a large demand. I'm okay with having a lot of older clients that are just like, can you set up a security camera for me, or can you get, I think my phone's been hacked. Can you help me out here? But I would like to expand to helping out small businesses, your solopreneur types, um, so on and so forth. I would really like to know how to deal with like backups and to be trained and to probably train myself. Someone wants to train me, that'd be cool, but no one's going to do that because no one trains anymore. No one wants to work. No, no one wants to train to help people with ransomware situations. And I'm also teaching myself a lot of cybersecurity skills. Right now, I'm learning assembly. I'm going through micro corruption right now. And, even though sometimes I go to sleep thinking, wow, I'm 30 years old and I'm actually seemingly less successful in my career than I was at the beginning. And then I remember the ditch I had to climb out of. Yeah, I may not be on top of the mountain like a lot of people are who didn't have to deal with an oppressive patriarchal family, but just the very fact that I escaped that's kind of insane. And then to also escape an equally fucked up patriarchal tech industry. Again, this ain't a victim story. This ain't a sob story. Okay, I am so much happier, even on my worst days, where I'm having to move money from Bill to pay Bob. I know those aren't how the phrase actually goes. I don't care. I'm like, those days are still better than some of my better days in corporate. And so, this is one story. I hope this at least inspires somebody to make some hard decisions about what they want out of life and what they want to do. Now, what I did may not work for you. Keeping the 9 to 5, if you happen to keep one, may still be your best option. Uh, Gig work's not for everybody. Um, Moving out of the country is not for everybody. But at the same time, I think it's important that we share real stories. And also, there's a survivorship bias on YouTube. I think we need to hear more stories of people that don't have this big comeback success story. More stories from people who are like, yeah, I climbed out of a giant crater and now I'm doing okay. Because that's an accomplishment too. This has been your local friendly and snarky scooter girl. Feel free to leave in the comments what you're doing now after tech. Let's all have a big group counseling circle of tech refugees. Goodbye.